Last Thursday, my friend Sako Toomey headed over to my house so we could carpool once more across 2.5 states to Imaginarium 2023. From Northern Virginia through the winding roads of West Virginia, even the highway winds, uh, across most of Kentucky to arrive over 9 hours later at Louisville, Kentucky. This was our third trek and my fourth time being a panelist at Imaginarium. The first time was a purely virtual experience in 2020. So, welcome back to Morgan's Writing Tips and Writerly Musings with writing tips from the pros and, of course, my own writerly musings. I'm your host, Morgan Hazelwood, and today I'm here to talk about writing, panels, and parties. My Imaginarium 2023 experience. Let's start with Thursday. As I was packing up, Sako messaged me and decided that we did want to host a room party. So I added another suitcase of supplies and a few coolers to my pile of stuff. Once she arrived, we loaded up, grabbed gas and lunch, and headed west. It was about 11:30 when we hit the road, and our ETA was about 8:30 p.m. But of course, this assumes no traffic, weather, or pit stops. Sako was a serious trooper. We drove through about six heavy downpours, with her driving through the worst three lightning storms. At one point, we had to pull over to the side of the road until the storm lightened. After gas and supper, we made it to Louisville and checked in and up to our room by about 9:30. The weather report suggested rain in the morning, so I rushed to the nearby shopping center to grab supplies for the planned party the next night and finished shopping just as the grocery store closed for the night. We found some friendly faces and visited where the staff was hanging out. I meant to hang out more, but when I bounced back to our room to grab my TENS unit, because it's a electro stim for tight muscles, I started to unpack so I could find the unit, and time got away from me. Sako made it back to the room and let me know that everyone was going to bed. We both slept hard, although I think she had some insomnia. Friday, first day of the convention. I got a little bit of blog work done, and then Sako and I walked over to Starbucks for some breakfast while we waited for registration to open. Apparently, I can't read a weather report because it was sunny, not storming, and super hot. I confidently led us out the wrong door and the long way around the hotel, but we finally made it there. With caffeine in hand and a breakfast sandwich in my stomach, we trudged back to the hotel through the broiling heat of July. Somehow, we managed to hit registration desk at its peak for like the entire weekend. It took maybe 15-20 minutes, but we got to the front and got our badges. After a quick sweep through the vendor room and the halls, I had my first panel of the weekend: How to Get Your Newsletter Out the Door, with Sandy Linder, John Palisano, Shannon McRoberts, Marilyn Barr, Molly Daniels, and Barbara V. Evers. I shared my tips, and I do have plans now to investigate Substack. After the panel, I overheard Barbara discussing how she'd had several people drop out of her Slush Fest panel on Saturday. I mentioned I'd read Slush before for the very small, free, quarterly, currently on indefinite hiatus online magazine, The Oddville Press, to which Barbara said I had more experience than most people and invited me to join the panel. Note, if you are unfamiliar, slush is the term in the publishing industry for unsolicited manuscripts and short stories that you send to agents or publishers through the proper channels. So, After that, I puttered around for a few hours, including starting those meatballs for that evening's party, and rounded up some new friends and familiar faces for dinner. Unfortunately, when we made plans, all we decided on was the Mexican place around the corner. By the time we realized that Tommy Smith and his carload was at a different restaurant, Sacco, Carl Moore, and I were seated with chips and salsa at the restaurant on the other side of the shopping center. Next time, I'll plan better. After dinner, Sacco and I swung through a few room parties, chatting and talking craft until it was time to open our own doors. We had a great crowd swing through, and my meatballs were a massive hit. Definite shout out to Carrie and Scott Canatzi for bringing Rosie, their little rescue kitten. Oh my God, so cute. There was a lot of great conversation, both about writing and everything else. For those of you who have only met me online, I'm feeling a little vindicated. Duane L. Hearn turned to me at one point and said, to completely paraphrase, "Whoa, that's not an affectation for your YouTube channel. You really do just get that hyped talking craft." Yeah, what can I say? I'm excitable. We finally kicked everyone out at 3 a.m., or closer to 3 a.m. than my morning alarm would have liked. Saturday. Because of my late night and the staggered panel start times, I only made the second half at the 10:15 a.m. Understanding Amazon's Algorithms panel with Chastity, sorry, Bolin. I took as many notes as I could, and one of the other attendees shared her notes with me. Let's hope I can read the photo I took of her page of notes when I go to write it up. After a quick lunch, I hit brand book bestseller with Tanita Johnson. While more applicable for nonfiction, there were definitely some takeaways for me. I did have to leave Tanita's presentation a few minutes early so I wouldn't be late for the slush fest, the one that I talked my way onto. When I arrived, there was a full array of panelists. There was our Kyle Hanna of Jumpmaster Press, Rob D. Smith of Rock and Hard Place Magazine, Marian Allen of Perbestet, and Michael R. Swanson. I think Michael didn't make it. I could be wrong about which guy it was. And uh, Barbara asked if I would read the first pages. For the Slush Fest, audience members had been asked to print out the first page of their manuscripts and hand them over with no name on the page. Then panel members would raise their hand when they would have stopped reading if the item was in their own slush pile, with the reader, i.e., me, stopping when all hands had been raised. Of course, I was happy to read the pages, leaving the hand raising to the professionals. We went through almost the full stack. I think there were three or four at the end. And I read for nearly the full 90 minutes. After each page, though, the panelists would explain why they raised their hand when they did and how to fix the problem to keep them reading. A great panel, and I have a note of something to add to my own first page of my current manuscript. On my way out, Kyle of Jumpmaster Plus asked if I'd ever thought about doing audiobooks, and I said yes. And he said, talk to Jean. I now owe them a reading of a first chapter, and we'll see if I have a paying gig as an audiobook narrator. Kind of excited. Okay, 100% excited. After that, I hit the grocery store again because we had too many leftovers not to host another party, but we're out of meatballs. This time, I found some gluten free turkey ones, which meant Sue could partake because she doesn't do beef. Oh, I tagged up with Sako for dinner since we weren't up for any awards, and we tried the banquet food before we headed to Cask Southern Cooking for dinner. Delicious. While the award ceremony was finishing up, I put on my dragon costume. Roar! Uh, yes. And lined up for the costume competition. If I'd won this year, I would have wanted to retire because that would have been 3 years in a row with my Beauty and the Mark of the Beast and my other Morgan Coraline inspired winning the past 2 years. But I ended up placing second after the amazing stilted Lady Demetrius from Resident Evil, with Chad Elliott placing third, proving that steampunk doesn't have to be brown. After celebrating my win, I let everyone in the hallways know we were doing a second party, and headed back to the room to take off some of the accoutrement. We had a great crowd. The meatballs continued to be a hit, and I introduced Imaginarium to something my friends and I call fairy shots. They are hollowed out strawberries filled with amaretto and topped with ready whip. Delicious, but messy. Plus, A. Bradley and another one of my guests shared some stories with the crowd, very memorable. And I let all the guests who wanted try on my dragon tail and introduced several people to my TENS unit for their tight muscles. We finally kicked people out a little after 2 a.m. and were asleep before 3. Sunday, I slept until noon when I needed it. I was going to hit a few panels, but I got the timing wrong. So I got lunch from the hotel vendor and made it to my first panel of the day, Attractive Blogging with Carl R. Moore, our tardy moderator. He got hung up on the previous panel. Becky Steele, Colleen Green, and Alan Goldstein. I shared notes and tips. Wait, no, I shared tips and took notes. There we go. Right after that, I was moderating the benefits of NaNoWriMo. Sco joined me, as did William S. Frisbee and Cassandra Morgan. You know I'm a huge fan of NaNoWriMo. With no time to say goodbye to people, I hurried upstairs and made it online just in time for my weekly productivity stream. I only edited about 750 words, but my current chapter is off to a much better start. Sako brought me a dinner invitation, so we joined Scott Bradley, James Sabata, and Duan L. Hearn for Chinese food, ice cream, and several hours of stories and talking shop. The hotel looked about empty, but we hung out in the lobby and toasted Devin Hilton's birthday at midnight. Monday, Sako and I planned to hit the road by 10:30 a.m., but instead we slept until then. We were on the road before noon, but after heavy rains, this time with me taking more of the brunt, and West Virginia not believing that gas stations should be at highway exits, the trip took a little longer. We made it back to Northern Virginia close to 10:30, where a certain kitty inspected my luggage and was very happy to see me. Well, that's another Imaginarium in the books. I cannot wait for next year. If you were there, let's connect. And I love talking craft. What a great convention. Let me know if you were there, if you're thinking about going in the future, or if you just like to talk craft. As always, craft with an FT at the end. My enunciation was a little off there. As always, thanks for watching and tune in again next time for more writing tips and writerly musings. Bye bye.